Welcome, everybody. It is 6:02. I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Racial Equity and Justice Task Force of January 20th to order. As you know, we have a short agenda tonight, but I think it is important to point out just procedurally what we're up to, because I know there were lots of questions, or some questions I should say about what the agenda item is. So the motion that we have on the agenda is to rescind the motion from January 6th to approve the Racial and Equity Justice Blueprint. So someone would move the motion. What will happen procedurally, and this has been an education for me, so thanks for the patience. What will happen procedurally is someone will make the motion, or it says Dad Droid. I'm going to let this person in, but let's see. Hopefully they can identify themselves. So Dad Droid, you've just been let in. Can you identify yourself? I hear you connecting to audio. Hi, Dad Droid, are you on the line? Okay, well, we will proceed. So as I said, so someone will make the motion. If there's a second, we can then open the item for discussion, and then we can move the item. If there's any other business that would then come, we would have to have 2/3 support. So to make it an additional motion. So why don't we start with the motion as on the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to rescind approval of the draft of the blueprint as voted on Thursday, January 6th, 2022.
Okay, is there a second?
I second. Tamisha.
All right, so Sandra made the motion, Tamisha seconded. Is there any discussion on the item?
Yes, I'm just curious, what is the goal? Are we going to revote once this is rescinded?
We
Is
would
that-
have to have two. So what would happen if the vote passes? Then, or if this motion passes, then we're back to where we were on January 6th. And then we would have to have 2/3 support to make another motion to approve the blueprint. So it would be as if we were back to that initial motion. If it does not have the support, then it stands. And again, unless there's another item that someone wants to take up, if someone wanted to change the blueprint at that point, any suggested change, if this motion passes, we would then have to have 2/3 to support to that. Any changes would have to also have 2/3 support.
Okay, so what I think I heard you say was, if we rescind it, then somebody has to make a motion to then bring it back for approval or bring it back through some process.
Right, meaning you'd have to vote, someone would have to then raise the motion, and then that would have to have 2/3 support since it hasn't been noticed.
Okay,
So any item that's not on the agenda that has to have 2/3 majority support from the body.
okay.
And just to clarify, if this motion does not pass, then we're done. We don't have to re-vote on it, correct?
Correct. Then it stands.
It stands.
The
yeah,
vote of January 6th stands.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to say that I would like to rescind my affirmative vote. And since there's no requirement of my vote to be affirmative for you to go forward with presenting the blueprint, I would appreciate a majority allowing me to rescind my vote.
You, were you at the meeting where we voted on it? I'm not, sorry, you weren't there last week. Okay, but you were there for the vote. Okay. I just wasn't remembering, sorry.
So is that another motion? This is Steve. Is that separate? I mean, I'm trying to
That's
figure out.
discussion. That's just discussion, Steve.
Sandra, if I'm hearing you,
Do we have to make a motion for Sandra's request?
No,
Or
no, because that's what's on the table. I think sorry, Sandra, if you want to clarify what
No, so I was just explaining why I wanted to make the motion and why I did make the motion. That's all. I was just explaining that.
This is Doug Bunnell. Can I just clarify? I unfortunately, and I apologize, had to miss the 6th and the 13th meeting. So I've been catching up with this through YouTube and so forth. It's not clear to me that Sandra and Tanisha, you voted for this on the 6th, correct? You approved it. You were, as I understood from the minutes and so forth, you proposed different language, that the language was amended. You then voted to pass it. But now 2 weeks later, you don't want to stand by that vote. Is that essentially it?
Yeah, essentially it wasn't 2 weeks later. It was actually me looking at the blueprint after we changed the language and sitting down and kind of digesting the whole thing. And I have to say, and I've said it all along, I don't think that Fairfield has systemic racism. I don't think that we have the data to support the quantitative data to support that. I don't think that we should be putting words in anybody's mouth and telling Brenda that she needs to make a declaration. I don't agree with any of that.
Then why did you
And
vote for it on the 6th? then?
because I made a mistake, and what I should have abstained, so I had a minute to really think about it and go through it. I made a mistake, and now I would like to rescind my vote.
Hey, is that the first time you read the document? Is on when we were going through it on the 6th? Or
No, I had printed out a document earlier in December that, because I can't go through everything on the computer, it's too hard for me to read it. So I had printed out an earlier document, and I had made a lot of notes on that. And then as we were in the middle of that document had changed quite a bit. And then as we were in the middle of changing everything, it got to be a lot of changes, to be honest with you. And I made a mistake. That's the bottom line for me. I made a mistake for me.
well, you participated in the process for last year and you didn't say anything. I mean, if you didn't say this data doesn't, I mean, we need everybody to speak up. So you didn't say this data doesn't make sense. Or any of it.
I did say that, Steve. I did say that.
I didn't see
said-
anything.
I said that.
Said at the beginning, but then we all.
Steve, point of order, if you could please let Sandra speak. It's really important that everybody feels heard and that we give everybody an opportunity to share their perspective. So
Yeah, I'm trying to.
please, you'll have a chance to speak. Sorry.
So I had said all along that I didn't think that Fairfield was systemically racist. I never thought that. I always said there was a difference between quantitative and qualitative data. While I appreciate and understand and have compassion for all of the events that have happened to people, I don't believe that that makes it a pervasive, systemically racist town. I just don't, and I won't. And the data, the only quantitative data we have is the police data from 2017. It was 2 police chiefs ago. It was when it wasn't even our current first selectman. It was our past. And I feel like we want all of these government bodies to work with us. I just can't support this. And I understand that we are coming from different sides. I understand that. So
Personally, I disagree with you, not surprisingly. I respect.
Sorry, points of order, just because there's going to be a lot of people who want to have, I think Steve wanted just,
I'm
if
so
you could
sorry.
raise your hand, that's okay. Steve, if you want to respond, and then Doug, and if you could, again, I just think it's important tonight. This is the last time we're going to have a chance to talk about this. I want to make sure everybody gets heard and has their fair chance. So Steve, did you want to respond?
No, I just think that what we're all about is talking. And if we can't talk amongst ourselves, then how can we expect the community? Then that's why we didn't hear the voices of the community, because we can't even hear our own voices. So if we didn't hear anything else, they want a task force to give them a voice to the administration. But you didn't hear the voice. That's what I'm saying. It was, we all came with an open mind, and that's what I heard, and I'm not saying anything. It's not about what I think. It's about what where the open mind and the data takes us. That's where it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't, so that's all I had to say.
Doug, then Jason?
Just simply, I respect you have a different opinion on this, and that you should feel like that's been aired. You had opportunity to speak about it. I frankly find it a little disrespectful that we're having this discussion on this night and not at some point in the dozens of other meetings we had. And I'm sorry you felt like you couldn't speak about it beforehand, but it feels like a little bit late in the game to then say you disagree with all this. But I respect that you don't agree with this proposal, and I think we have to figure out how you can communicate your lack of agreement with it. Thank you.
Jason?
Yeah, I quickly just want to say that I appreciate Sandra and Tamisha's opinion, and Steve, I think that's exactly what we get is feedback from everybody. I just want everybody to, what I think I heard Nancy say is it's a 2/3 majority vote on anything that we want to pass.
No, today, what has to happen, we have a motion on the floor, which would just require majority support.
Two-thirds,
So
2/3
6,
majority.
2/3 is if we then want to pass something else. We want to make an additional motion. So if this motion passes, we will then have to have 2/3 support to make a new motion to go about approving it again. So going about a process again.
Got it. So what approval do we need to move past this motion that we're at now?
So if the motion passes, I'll reiterate, if this motion passes with 6 votes, then we're left with a blueprint that is essentially, we're back to where we were January 6th,
Mhm.
which is having a blueprint that needs approval. So then someone will have to make a motion, and it will have to get seconded, and then it has to have 2/3 support. Can't do that math. What is that? 7 votes to then go ahead and make a motion and to support a motion to approve the document. And then we can either vote on that, and then it either gets approved or not approved based on that. So additionally, if anyone, if this motion passes, if there are changes people want to make to it, language changes, we would also have to have 2/3 support.
And Nancy, if this motion does not pass,
Then it passes, and really it's
if it doesn't, just be
If it
clear,
does
if this
not-
motion doesn't pass,
then we have an approved document, and basically, in some ways, what this is
I think, Nancy, just to make it clear, if if this vote doesn't pass, the document stands as it is. And, you know, this,
And the vote
He's
from
feeling so
January
on
6th.
record. the vote from January 6th stands. That's where we are at this point. You know, I think I just want to, you know, sort of reiterate what Steve said. I do feel as though, you know, when we look at sort of the process of putting this document together, there are a lot of people who put a lot of time and effort into it. And it was, we all had the option to be part of it at any time. There were lots of opportunities for conversations. I think I interviewed almost everyone on the task force with the exception of Tamisha, and we actually discussed this issue of whether or not we were looking for individual acts of meanness or we were looking for systemic problems that we felt that the town could address. And I was really clear with everyone that when I was using the term systemic problems, I was using problems that we could address from an administrative level. And so we set out to look for supporting data. For example, the police stops. Yes, it is from 2017. However, 2017 is not a long time ago. There are still people who continue to live here. We had an anecdotal story from this year, and then we did actually sit down with the police, and they also felt like there were changes that they could make and then proceeded to make those changes. So this is not something that we just kind of pulled up whole cloth. I think when we look at the response from the police department, it was very much about how we could look at it from a systems perspective, not from a personal perspective. I think, you know, thinking about it as individual acts puts a lot of emphasis on motivation of the people, and that's not what we're here to do. I think we've said that over and over again. And so I think the discussion about whether or not there is systemic racism or what those words mean and all of that has been a continuing dialogue. And I think, yes, we've heard you say you don't agree with it. We actually haven't had any, you haven't said anything about the other things that we found. And so we've had lots of discussions about lots of things. The question for me is, what is to be gained by reopening the document and reopening the discussion and revoting? And, you know, I hear you, Doug, when you say it feels disrespectful at this point. You know, the document did not change in its foundation since December. There were some language tweaks, but the general consensus of putting out a statement, that's been in that document since June. And the statement really has, it changed on January 6th based on the feedback that you brought forward. And it would have changed in July, August, September, anytime that you brought it forward. You brought it forward at the last minute, we changed it at the last minute. I think, you know, when we look at participation in the process, you know, I feel concerned about the people who did put the time in, who were asking for feedback. And I feel as though, you know, to kind of go back after a vote is really unfair to those who did put in the time and effort to put the document together. So that's my thought about it.
I also, Matt, I recognize you after I want to make a comment, and then after Matt, Doug. You had said earlier in your comments that you don't, Sandra, want to put words in Brenda's mouth. I just want to remind everyone, these are our recommendations. We can't make anybody do anything. We can't make the administration act or declare, you know, based on best practices, based on Connecticut passing a bill in April to recognize racism as a public health and safety crisis. You know, again, modeling after best practices, modeling after 21 municipalities that have declared it to be so. As Steve said, I think some of us have been able to put aside sort of personal perspective to say, what is the best practice when we look at these various systems? And so we're putting forth recommendations, but ultimately, are we making somebody do something? We're not empowered to do that, as you know, I think we're well aware. In fact, our charge ends on the delivery of this document and the presentation of it. So, you know, I think that it will be up to everybody to interpret the data that we present. And when I read the data, when Mike Cummings, the superintendent of schools, read the data and the report, he said that he was impressed with our ability to support our findings and our recommendations with data, including we use the findings of that school survey that were published. So it's not just the police department. It's grounded in a lot of research, not just the listening projects, the deep listening projects, which we embarked on early on in a really thorough way. So the interpretation, it seems, of a majority of the group is that we do support those findings in a systemic way. So I guess mostly wanted to reiterate that this is based on best practices and they are just recommendations, that ultimately it will be up to either a permanent task force or the consultant that is being brought in through the ARPA funding, or perhaps a permanent position, a community officer of justice and belonging. And, you know, I do appreciate what you said, that you made a mistake. I think that, you know, I respect that. So I said Matt, then Doug, and I saw someone else's hand, Ryan, after Doug.
I just had a quick clarifying question, which was the motion seems to be to rescind the task force's approval of the blueprint. But from my recollection, when Sandra was speaking, she just mentioned that she wanted to withdraw her affirmative vote for the blueprint. And so I'm wondering if there could be some clarification as to what exactly the motion is, and then go ahead.
Yeah, technically it does have to be as listed on the agenda. Thank you for pointing that out. If I didn't hear that nuance, the vote is not just about Sandra's individual vote. It is about rescinding the motion from January 6th. So if you had a different motion in mind, Sandra, or the motion on the table as listed should be to rescind the motion from the task force, not.
Robert's
not
rules
about the-
doesn't give you
Yep.
the opportunity to just take your vote back. It has to be, you have to rescind the entire vote and then we'd have to vote again.
That was my original.
Unless she made a motion that was about her specific thing, but it would need, again,
But
that
that,
would. need
Robert's rules
2/3
doesn't
support.
allow for that.
But that's not what's on the, that's not
The
what's on the
rules don't
table.
allow, but even the rules don't allow for that. You have to rescind the whole, you can't rescind one
Yes.
vote. You have to rescind the whole
Right,
document.
correct,
vote.
correct.
Yeah, so even if even if you amend the motion, Sandra, that's not a motion that Robert's rules allows for. It has to be, we revoke the whole vote and then we start over again.
That was what I understood it to be
Yeah.
as well.
Okay, so.
That's helpful,
Doug,
thank you.
Doug, then Ryan.
Just quickly, so I just want to clarify, Sandra and Tamisha both, if the motion's rejected here, Sandra and Tamisha both still have the opportunity to make statements about this at the Board of Selectmen meeting if they want to, or in any other forum. You've not lost your option or opportunity to, you know, communicate your disapproval of your change of perspective on it. So the real issue is, like, do we go through having to re-vote, or do we just sort of say, if you don't agree with it, you'll have to communicate that in some other way? It's not. So
I mean, that's the rub, exactly. I mean, my inclination is not to support it, not against Sandra and Tamisha, but a vote, as Gina said, to support the work that's been done, because I think there are opportunities. But I think that's an important thing that the group should maybe reflect on. So point well taken, at least by me personally. So Ryan?
I just wanted to say that I think we've really aired it out between last week and this week. It seems like there's clarity on what the issue is. And I feel like, as someone that put in a lot of time on the plan and often waited many days to see what were the other comments, were the comments coming in, so that there could be dialogue, and was often disappointed that more people were not commenting in real time when it was being written. And also I thought, you know, the week that we voted on it, that I felt sensitive to, you know, when the issue of the term within that recommendation came up of using the term systemic racism. I thought that the point that was being made was really a lot about the term, not, not so much the fact that, yes, there are things in play that affect how policies and programs are carried out and how they affect people of color in our community and everywhere. So I feel like it was thoroughly aired out, that it was respectfully addressed in the moment, and that there really, from my point of view, there is no need to rescind and go back a step back, respectfully understanding where you're coming from in terms of hindsight. I think everybody has hindsight. If we all went through the document again, probably, we could continue to go through it and say, there's a tweak, there's this, there's that, or whatever. But I think it's difficult to talk about this subject without using a term as central as systemic racism. And whether we use it, other people are going to use it. Reporters are going to use it. Other people in this world are going to use it. That is a useful term. And to say that we need to skirt a term as central to the dialogue is, I don't think it's productive. So having, heard everybody, it seems like everybody has kind of spoken or whatever. I don't see why, we couldn't move to vote.
Is there any other comment? Gina, you're on mute.
I was just going to ask if there was anyone else that needed to comment that feels like they have not been heard. I think that I've always felt like this is always part of the process, that we ask people to tell us how they feel. So
You can put
now
your hand
is your
down,
time to
Ryan.
speak. Pardon?
Ryan can put your hand down. You're-
Now's
Yeah,
your
I
time to
just,
speak. So if there's
you know,
anything else that you feel, I think this could very well be one of the last votes we ever take. So I would really like to make sure that all voices are heard.
I'll share one thing. This is Karen Lynch for the record. I continue to be impressed that two of the institutions in our town, the education system and the policing system, have given us kind of the type of partnership and the type of collaboration, us as a task force, that we need to make Fairfield a better place for all residents in the spirit of continuous improvement. And I, for one, am very heartened by the fact that once again, Felix Esposito has invited us in for the police candidate interviews, that Mike Cummings said that our recommendations in the blueprint are his recommendations as well. And I think there's no denying that two of the systems in our town are on board thinking they need to make improvements. And I can't deny that. If that's not factual enough, then I don't know what is, because those are the very types of organizations that we, they're exemplary of, or, examples of what we're trying to do, which is just move the needle towards a better place for everybody. And
Karen, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
I'd love
I just think that that's factual information coming back at us, that there are two systems in town that would like to continue to improve in this way.
To that end, I would love to share with you the comments that I received from the superintendent on his reading of the blueprint. Good evening, Nancy. The amount of research, investigation, writing, etc., that went into this report is very impressive. It is clear to me that the committee did the work to back the recommendations. It is also clear to me that the theme of the document is inclusive in its intent, and that the writers believe in a better Fairfield for all. I can imagine how people are taking sides, but that is not in the document. It is about movement forward. Specific to the education section, we are on the same page. Your recommendations are our recommendations. It is what needs to be done. So I hope that makes the group collectively feel good about the work and the effort and ultimately the recommendations that we came to. So on the heels of your comments, Karen, I just wanted to share that. I think it's wonderful that as you said, Matt, thank you. I know that you will be participating in those interviews. Karen again, and Jamie, if there's Jamie Forbes, who will also participate if there's space for that. So I think that is great validation of the distance we've traveled in the last 15 months. Are there any other comments?
Can I just
Yeah,
make a final comment?
Yeah,
that, you
speak
know, this is
now.
a difficult discussion right now. This is a difficult issue. It's going to leave perhaps some people feeling like they've not been heard or listened to. I just want to point out, Nancy, and stress how around a lot of issues, but particularly around this issue, I think you've stretched pretty far to allow people to be heard. And I just wanted to affirm that, or, you know, recognize that.
Thank you.
Second.
You know, I hope that even if ultimately not everyone walks away in the way that they want to, that is true, that at least everyone has felt listened to and heard. We may not all agree.
I think, you know, the truth is this is difficult work. It is painful, it's personal, it's challenging. It makes us question ourselves, our community, each other. And I think that's at the core of the work. I think if we don't have difficult conversations, and we can't have difficult conversations in a way that people feel at least heard, you know, not everyone is ever going to be satisfied with every decision, but I have hoped, and I think Nancy's done a fairly good job of opening up and making sure that we always give people the right to say what they need to say. And regardless of how we walk away, I think that it's important to understand that is the process. That, you know, I spoke to all of you before you stepped on this committee, and we talked about this. We knew that this was going to be difficult. We knew we were going to have some times when things were going to be challenging. And I think to remember that taking that on is what it feels like to be a person who feels like you need this. You know, it is a difficult life to live, and it's difficult to have this be your reality. And so I, you know, before we vote, I just wanted to thank you all again for stepping into this very difficult process to try to come together and make Fairfield a better place. And, you know, if we don't have any other comments, I think we should take it to a vote, Nancy.
One thing I'm going to ask is if any has anything to say, any pearl of wisdom. She always speaks so beautifully. Sandra, if you have any last words. Tamisha, we haven't heard from you tonight. Steve, Doug, as task force members, Jason, and then I'll turn it to the community, and then we will take it to a vote.
You know, Gina said it so beautifully. This is difficult work. We always knew that. And we recognize that there are decisions made when you're part of a group which you will not go along with, or you will question later on. But that's the process. You can never have unanimous. But once the recognition that there has been so much work done is important, the recognition that just because to look at the larger narrative of what is happening around us, it's what's happening around the country, what's happening around the state, what's happening around the town. You know, this word systemic racism, it's difficult. And we spend so much time on that word. But if we are so scared of that word, and we are so uncomfortable using that word, can you imagine what that word for a person of color, when people of the majority cannot even use that without a disdain, what that does to a person? That recognition that isn't that, it's tough. But the work that has been done and the conversations that we've had over the months haven't been easy. It's been growth, it's been listening, it's been learning. But the realization that even after 15 months, there are, we have not been able to make that dent, that recognition. So can you imagine how difficult it is for people who haven't talked like we have, who haven't been in this, who haven't seen the data? How can they move forward? This is our charge, that we're just going to move a couple of centimeters, I think. Maybe an inch would be a lot. So, I want to thank everyone again, Nancy and Gina, for your leadership, for everyone else who put the time in to do this and speak about the difficult conversations. And like we all knew, this was going to be tough. But then there's a comment which has stuck with me, and I want to bring that up here. Right in the beginning, it was said, I don't even know what you are talking about, the racism. The only racism that I can closely relate to, that feeling, is being a woman and not being treated fairly. That was a comment made right in the beginning. So if a person doesn't understand what racism is and can only relate it to them being a woman, so a woman of color goes through that, a woman of color goes through the racism, a woman of color goes through a lot more. We cannot expect everyone to be on that page. So it's sad, but it's the way. We'll do whatever needs to be done. I'm sure the task force will rise to the occasion and do the right thing. I am equally sure that the town of Fairfield will accept and reject as they see it. And hopefully in time, when they are really invested in it, they will take the time to watch all these videos that we've gone through. And maybe they'll learn something from it. That's all what we can hope for.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else from the task force have something that they'd like to say?
Thanks, Annie.
Is there anyone from the community? Kathy, Matt, Tim, Anna, anyone? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So we are the motion, just to remind everybody, a vote yes is to rescind the motion to approve the blueprint. And a vote no is to not take that up. And there's of course abstaining. So I'm going to do a roll call vote, just so we've all been heard. All in favor. Sandra. Well, I'll do it this way. So I can call on you for yes or no or abstaining, or we can, I'm going to do it that way because by order of the screen. Ryan.
No.
Gina. You're on mute.
No.
Karen.
No.
Doug.
No.
Steve.
Hell no. Sorry, no.
Steve, thank you. Sandra.
Yes.
Innie.
No.
Jason.
No.
And Tamisha.
Absolutely.
And Nancy, no. So the motion does not carry. And that is the end of business. I will say thank you to everybody. We don't have any other items for this agenda. This may be the last time that we gather. We do have a scheduled meeting for next week, but in advance preparation for the presentation the following Monday, it is very likely that that meeting will be canceled. Karen and Doug and Steve are set to present. I encourage everyone to attend, to share their thoughts, and if it's open for comment, that will be up to the administration, but I don't know how it's going to be listed on the agenda yet for the Board of Selectmen, but we're slated to present, Doug, Steve, and Karen are slated to present on January 31st at 4 o'clock. I'll certainly share that information with you. We disband on the delivery of that blueprint. It has been delivered to the first select woman's office. We did have a meeting, so there's some gray area. So don't skip town, but this could be the last time we formally gather. And I just, want to say thank you so much, not just to the committee, but to the ongoing input of so many community members, Kathy and Matt. I see Tim's name on the screen, for just continually being a part of these sometimes difficult, but always informative and important discussions. Gina, is
Nancy,
there anything?
may I say thank you to you, Nancy, for
Oh.
your passion and your leadership. You really have brought it all to this. And Gina, thank you for everything that you did. I know on a very personal level, this work means everything to you. So I just am grateful to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what Nancy said. I think that this has been one of the most difficult experiences that I've experienced as a Fairfield resident. I think, having someone call me a racial slur in front of, on recording, that lives in infamy will be something that I will likely never forget. It will always stay with me, but will also always stay with me was the support that I got from all of you after. I will always think about how much, as a person of color who lives in this town, who's raised my children in this town, who's been paying taxes in this town for 20 years, it gives me hope that there are people who have stepped into this work that don't necessarily need to, who it does not affect directly. It means everything. I think when we talk about, I think we existed for representation in a lot of ways. I think people saw themselves reflected in this group. I think they felt heard. And I would hope that they will, whatever happens from this point on, this happened and it was important work and you put so much of yourselves into it. I mean, I think that there were so many different things that happened through this process. Lots of laughing, lots of crying, lots of things. But it really comes down to the individuals who have decided to take this on as the work that you feel is important enough to make this town the place that it has always had the potential to be. And that's how I will see this work. And so I thank you again. And I hope that I see you all down the road somewhere.
Thanks, Gina.
Is
Thanks, Gina.
there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll
Yeah.
second.
And Ryan to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, thank you all for your time and Godspeed.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everybody.